this session, we're going to be looking at importing metadata using BimlFlex. What we'll cover is I'm going to give you a quick overview of the BimlFlex workflow. We're going to recap on connections and projects, and then I'm going to show you the import metadata options, and then we're going to dive into a demo. The BimlFlex workflow all starts with importing metadata from the source. The BimlFlex add-in uses the BimlFlex engine to allow you to import from any data source directly into Excel. We then take the metadata and we publish that to our metadata repository where it is persisted. The metadata is also tracked in a meta vault so that you can always roll back or see any changes made to your metadata. So it's all audited. We use that metadata to import that metadata into Biml Studio where the BimlFlex bundles it. And within the BimlFlex bundle, you can customize any of our standard templates using our extension point, which is a more advanced subject that we'll cover later on. And then you'll actually build, deploy, and run the solution. And I'm going to give you a little bit of that end-to-end in this session. Within the BimlFlex ribbon, you'll see a button called Import Metadata. When you click this, you'll get the Import Metadata dialog box. And within the Import Metadata dialog box, it's broken down into various sections. The first section is the source and target. In other words, the source connection, which is the connection you want to connect to extract the metadata from. And the metadata you're extracting it, you want to associate that with a project. So the target project effectively is the object that I'm importing it. What is the project that I want to attach it to? You then have a number of options that importing your metadata. So if you're connecting to your source, you may choose to not bring in the primary key or the foreign keys or the unique constraint on the indexes. This just allows you the option to toggle on or off which metadata you want to bring in. Additional metadata you want to bring in. Now we just recommend you leave that as the default of everything selected, and then you have all of that information. You can always untoggle that. The next thing you want to do is possibly tweak some incoming metadata. And what we've done here is, especially in a context where you are integrating multiple different data sources, where the source systems possibly have different naming conventions. So you may have one source system that uses uppercase with an underscore, and the next one has lowercase with underscores. Another one has got camel case or proper case, or even Pascal case. When you build your data warehouse, especially in the data vault environment, you may want to say, well, actually, I want to standardize my column names in the data vault and use a certain pattern. So what you will do there is you'll say, and I tend to use Pascal case, that's my personal preference, but I've seen some of our customers prefer uppercase with underscores. I've not seen proper case and camel case and lowercase as a preference, but you know, this is where it becomes your team's preference. So here you will choose, let's just say Pascal case, and then it will convert everything to Pascal case. Now in the demonstration that I'm going to do, you know, the metadata coming in is already in Pascal case, but I'll actually probably just select uppercase just so you can see what happens there. The next thing is infer metadata. Now this actually is just, when we import the metadata, BimlFlex requires a single business key to work, or everything needs to be every object has to have a single business key. So what we then tend to do is we tend to say, if you have multiple primary keys on a table, it will concatenate those primary keys together to create a sort of a single internal business key. Now this, I believe, is the most commonly used best practice. Just if you don't want to do it that way, you can set that to none, and then we won't infer the business keys. What you have there is you have two different options: infer business keys from primary or infer business keys from unique. If you have a source system where the natural keys or the business keys are actually defined as unique constraints, you would want to choose the infer business key from unique constraint. What will happen there is it will infer the business key from the unique constraint. If the unique constraint doesn't exist, it will then default to the primary key. So it kind of cascades up. If you are re-importing business metadata, so if you've already imported the tables metadata and you are re-importing the tables metadata, you want to then set that info to none because you do not want it to re-import the business key. Retain changes to previous imported metadata. Again, what you have here is if you've already imported metadata and you are re-importing an object for a reason, possibly in the context of I want to add some columns, or you know, we made a data type change in the column in the table. You have the following options. You can retain all changes. Now, all changes actually if you say retain all changes, we won't change anything, but you have to specifically say that you want to retain foreign key changes or column order changes or data type changes, and those are separately toggled to be maintained. So we'll give you an example here. Let's just say you import your metadata from a data source that doesn't have foreign keys defined on the source system. You then go through the process of defining those foreign keys or references within the metadata. If you re-import it without selecting retain foreign key changes, it will actually go and default them because there's none in the source system. It'll go override them with blanks. The same with column order. You may choose to put a business key at position 2 or a new column that you've derived in the metadata. So you've added a column to the metadata and you've put that at position 2. If you re-import this and do not say retain column order changes, it'll import it and actually go and reorder your columns. And this is probably going to be better when we go into the demo. I'll demonstrate that to you. And the same with data type changes. Lastly, we're looking at the pad business key. This is really relevant to Data Vault only. If you are doing straight data marts of the source system and you're just loading into data marts or dimensional data warehouse, you can effectively ignore this. What we're doing here is we're saying when we are deriving the business key, we want to create a business key of a minimum length of 100. And then we want to suffix the business key with a BK. So it'll have, let's just say the table is called customer, it'll be customer underscore BK. And then the key columns end with is, these are normally tend to be set correctly, but if you have any of your foreign key tables, so if your customer table refers to your sales table refers to your customer table, in your sales table you normally have something like customer ID. What these columns end with means is that when we derive or when we use our import method, we say the reference between these two is on customer. So again, I'll show that to you how that's relevant when you have multi-table column references. So let's head straight into a demo here. All right, so we're going to be importing the metadata. I've used customer stage 2 here. So if you're following along, here I'm using customer stage 2 here, and I have some metadata here. So all I've done here is I've cleaned up the connections a little bit. I've added the record source here. I'm going to persist history, and I've got some connection settings set correctly here. On the batches, I've just added a second batch here, which will become more relevant in further demonstration. So I'm going to import the source metadata on this batch and on this project here. Okay, so that's the import metadata. On my objects and my columns, I have no metadata there at all. So again, I'm just going to hit this import metadata option here, and I'm going to say that I want to connect to AdventureWorks LT, and I'm going to pop it into that project. I'm going to unselect everything here, select everything there, and remove the views. So I want to bring all these tables in. Okay, I'm going to leave this here just to show you this sort of what this table column names do. Table and column names, I'm going to set that to uppercase, and I'm going to leave everything else as a default here and just hit import. So as you can see here, it's imported everything for me. With that, as you can see here, the model override name is now inferred from that setting there of it will be inferred from this setting here, this uppercase setting here has now gone into the model override name. So when we build our Data Vault out, or when we do get into the Data Vault Accelerator, it will now go and create my hubs and links and satellites based off these model override names. We'll touch on these model, everything that's got the word model in front of it is relevant to the Data Vault Accelerator, and we'll touch on that in future sections. But basically what it's done here is it's just imported all the objects that I wanted in here, assigned them all an object type of table effectively. So I'm going to go and publish this sheet up. So now my objects sheets have been pushed up to the metadata database and is now persisted in the metadata database. Again, I'll do the same with column here, and I'll just show you here what has happened with these BKs here. So let's look at the customer address, business key here. So what you'll see here on the customer address here, I'm just going to close this off so you get a little bit more. It has actually gone and taken these two columns, which is to set as the primary key, so customer ID and customer address ID, and created a business key here. And in the SSIS expression here, what you'll see is you'll see a column called flex to BK. So this is an internal utility function that will take any comma delimited list of columns and create a business key, a concatenated business key from that. What we've also imported here is these reference tables. So it's imported the foreign keys between tables and created the references between them. Again, if your source system do not have foreign keys, this is where you would come as a post-import process, go and set all of this up for you. Obviously using Data Vault or even within BimlFlex, BimlFlex require you to set these references. It won't stop you if you don't do it, but BimlFlex require you to set these references between objects, and the reason for that is so that it can actually know in which order should it extract and load the packages to ensure there's no missing foreign keys. So again, I'm just going to go and set this up, and now I've just published that metadata. And that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to head over to Biml Studio, and again, I'm just using that same customer here, or this stage. And in Biml Studio, I'm just going to go up here, and I'm going to hit refresh metadata. This is now going to pull the metadata from our metadata database called BimlFlex and bring that into the solution and create all of my tables and packages for me. So what I've got here, while it's updating, I have got my persisted staging or my ODS layer. So what I've decided here, based on a setting, and I'll just pop over there real quick and show you, based on this setting here in my connections, I've said that I want a persist history. In other words, I want to track history in my ODS layer or my persisted staging layer. And I've just given it here that this project is coming from this source, getting staged, and I also want to track it in a persisted staging layer. Based on those settings, I now have created all of my tables that I need for my ODS. I have created all my tables, or I have all my tables ready to be created for my staging layer. I have all of my extract packages ready to go, and I have my project and my batch. So all I'm going to do now is just going to say create table script. And again, when you deploy this out, you may want to do this slightly differently, but I'm just going to go and grab that and run that into my stored procedure, my SQL server. And once I've run that into my SQL server, I can then build this project, and then I'll have all of my packages. So as a minimum there, you have, let me just drop this in here, run this for you, run this in. I'll head back over to Biml Studio. I'll close this down, and all I now need to do is, first thing I want to do is just check that I'm running for the right version. So I'll go and right click onto my project here. I'll go to properties, and I'm saying yes, I'm running for SQL Server 2014, and I'm using project deployment over here. So I'm good to go, and I'm just going to hit the build button here. So this is now going to go ahead and build out, just from importing the metadata, it's going to build out my source to staging packages and my persistent staging packages. We're going to go through that a little bit later on, and I'm not going to go through in this importing the metadata into that, but effectively I've imported my metadata now, and I can now build out my source to staging packages. All right, there we go. It's all built.